Good morning.
Good morning.
All right. How's everybody doing?
Doing
Doing good.
well.
Yeah.
Doing well.
So,
Considering we're getting ready to end Lent and head into a busy, busy time, Holy Week.
yeah,
I feel
next
like we say that every time we approach a church season. It's like we're ending this, we're heading to a busy time. Is there never
It's
a
never not busy. It's
yeah,
never, yeah.
but I think honestly, in my opinion, the week before Holy Week is sometimes busier, often busier than Holy Week itself, because
You're right.
the week
You're
before
right.
Holy Week is getting everything set in place, contacting everyone who's involved, and it's a lot of people, and making
Yep.
sure all the plans are set up. And then Holy Week is just, if you've done your homework the week before, like you should, Holy Week is just everything happening. And that's still busy, but it's the week before that I think is more busy than Holy Week
You're
itself.
right. You're right, PR. And if you haven't done your homework, this is a good little lesson for all the boys and girls listening. If you haven't done your homework and you get the Holy Week, it's not good
Not fun.
because it's got to still happen and it's just tough.
Yeah.
So,
It's just
yeah,
not as
good.
holy if you haven't done your homework.
Yes. It's
Yeah.
a good
Well,
takeaway. Always do your homework.
always do your homework. And Jason is doing a good job of keeping us on track with our homework.
Yes, he's printing our bulletins, and you're exactly right.
Yeah. Well, what have we got in the Old Testament this week?
Well, our Old Testament story, as promised last week, we're going to talk about a guy named Job. So Job, what do y'all know about this story? Have y'all heard this story before?
Well, that's funny because it looks an awful lot like Job, Pastor Eric.
It does. It does. J-O-B. Job, but it's not pronounced Job. It's Job. Well, actually, will you hold that picture? I'm looking at that same picture. Will you hold that picture back up? Let the boys and girls see what is that guy doing? I guess that's Job. What is he doing?
He's
Looks like he's cleaning himself.
Cleaning. Okay. It looks like I don't think that's what he's doing though, but I think that's what it looks like, Daniel.
Well, by cleaning, I mean, oh, okay. So yeah, I was thinking more like preparation for worship, some faiths.
Yes, anointing. I don't think that's oil that he's putting on his head. A few weeks ago, on Ash Wednesday, we marked the ashes on it. We talked about that. We marked the ashes before it. And that is remembering an old tradition that this guy here, Job, is doing. When you're really sad, they would, in their act of sad, they felt so bad, they would take ashes and pour them over themselves. I guess to make themselves feel even worse. But that's, I think, what Job is doing. But he's got a lot to feel sad about. Do y'all know this story? What happens in this story, Job?
Well, it's God and presumably the devil are walking about, and it says Satan. God's like, yeah, my servant Job is faithful, and Satan's like, yeah, I think so, but things are going really well for your servant. What if things were going poorly? Like, what if things were going bad for your servant? What if we put a little pressure on your servant? Which is some dark thinking, but then again, this dark thinking is coming from Satan, so no surprises there. So Satan goes and puts some pressure on Job, and he's thinking, I bet that if things got really bad for Job, he wouldn't love God so much. And so things do get bad for Job. Job loses everything. He loses his house, he loses his family, he loses everything. He gets really sick. He gets these sores all over his body. And he gets really mad at God. But he doesn't say anything bad about God, but he does get mad at God. And then at the end of the story, he kind of calls God to task and says, "Get down here and explain yourself." And God comes and has a word with Job, and the whole time, Job was able to, this word lament, which means just to be really, really sad and kind of shake his fist at God, but he doesn't stop being faithful to God. And I think there's a key key takeaway from that story about when we go through tough times, when we go through things that make us want to lament. So,
Yes.
mhm.
I think that's a good summary, PR. I think, that's, and how, one way you might say it that we talk about in St. Matthew's is Job went through a wilderness, a bad time, but he wasn't alone in that.
Mhm.
And what are those lessons that we're supposed to learn from this?
Mhm.
I mean, for ourselves, when we read these stories in the Bible, they aren't just homework, or they mean something to us, and they can tell us something about the things that we go through in our lives today, like good times and bad times.
Mhm.
So maybe what are some of the lessons about this book of Job?
I mean, bad things do happen to good people.
Absolutely, because
Yeah.
Job was a good guy. He
Yeah.
was a good guy. He had a lot to lose, but he was a good guy, and bad things still happen.
Mhm.
Okay, so that's one lesson.
Yeah.
In life, bad things happen.
Mhm.
But what else?
Do we go back to your catchphrase? God walks with us in the wilderness. Wilderness
Yes.
will not last forever.
Yep. I think that's another good one, because again, you think about it's okay for us to get mad at God,
Yes.
like Job. It's okay to shake your fist and get mad. But God can take that. God still loves us, and God can say, just kind of hugs us and say, just kind of go on and just be mad. I'm still here for you. I'm not gonna abandon you. And he didn't abandon Job either. God didn't abandon Job either. What else?
There's also this piece of the story that when Job was going through this bad time, he had 3 friends who came and saw him, and they kept asking, what did you do? What did you do to deserve this? Because it was a attitude at the time, and I think there's still some people that may think this way too, that you had to do something to deserve your fortune. You had to do something to deserve what you got. And so Job's friends were thinking, oh, what? He looked like a good guy, but what did he do to deserve this? And Job's like, I didn't do anything. And so again, it goes back to bad things do happen to good people, but God's still there. And when we're going through a bad time, we can lift that up to God in prayer as well.
So those are 3 right there. 3 lessons from this story. Bad things happen in this life. Number 2, it's not always because we deserve it, because of something we did. It's not because that we were necessarily bad to somebody else and God's getting God's revenge on us. That's not necessarily. Maybe we make bad choices that bring bad things to us, but it's not a result. Sometimes these bad things aren't a result of the bad things we do. And the third lesson PR just said there is that sometimes prayer and just being sad and crying out to God is an okay thing to do. That's an okay response to this.
And the wilderness doesn't last forever, because
that's right.
At the end of the story, God restores Job.
Yeah.
Job's suffering didn't last forever.
That's right.
It may have felt like it was going to last forever, but it didn't.
That's a great takeaway. Job's a very important story, packed full of lessons, and I think it's worth us remembering. So I'm glad we talked a little bit about Job today. So those are important lessons. We have another story, and this one is from the Spark Bible, and it is what we're going to talk about in a few weeks with Easter. It's really what all of our church talk is about. It's what church, it's what the Jesus story, it's about why we go to church, is this little story right here I'm getting ready to read. All right. It's called The Empty Tomb. It was early in the morning on the 3rd day after Jesus died. The sky was pink and red with the first light of the sun. The women didn't notice the sky. They hurried to the cave that contained Jesus' body. Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James, led the way. 2 others, Salome and Joanna carried the spices to rub on the body of Jesus. They had a job to do. And remember, Jesus, we already talked about this. He had just been crucified, put on the cross, and he had died. So they put him in this tomb. When the tomb of Jesus came into sight, they froze. Uh-oh, they had forgotten about the huge stone that sealed the opening to the cave. How would they move this big stone? The women kept going to the cave anyway. As they came closer, the women could see that the stone had already been rolled away. They peeked inside. Ooh, it was dark in there. It was cold in there. Drip, drip. It was damp in there. What? It was empty in there. Jesus was gone. An angel appeared in sparkling white clothes. The glow from the angel brightened even the darkest corners of the cave. The women shielded their eyes from the blinding light. Don't be afraid, the angel said. Jesus isn't here. This is a place for the dead. Jesus is alive. Hurry, the angel said. Go tell the disciples. The women did not delay. They ran to tell Jesus' friends what they had seen and heard. Oof. Mary bumped into a man, tripped and fell at his feet. Wait, she knew those feet. A familiar hand reached out to help her. Wait, she knew that hand. She looked up. Yes, she knew that smile. It was Jesus. Hello, friends, Jesus said. Jesus was really alive. The women hugged his feet and shouted with joy, go tell the others the good news that I am alive. Jesus said, I will meet them in Galilee. I can't wait to see them all again. The women had a new job to do. They had to tell everyone Jesus was alive. Wow, that's a story. Wow, that's quite a story.
That's a lot.
What do we think about that?
Jesus got out of the tomb.
Yep. Yep. Just when they thought it was the end of Jesus, he came back from the dead. And what does that mean for us today? That tomb was empty and Jesus is not dead, but alive. What does that mean for us all these years later?
I think of what we put this in our message for the funerals that happen. That verse from Romans, if we have been united with Christ in a death like his, we will certainly be united with him in a resurrection like his. So to say, Jesus died just like we do eventually, but Jesus rose from the dead. So we will too.
Mm-hmm. And that's good news. That is capital G, capital N, good news. That's the gospel right there.
Amen.
And
death and life.
Yeah. And I think especially at times when families are gathering for funerals, those particularly sad times, that is the best news you can have.
It is. Sometimes if we're with somebody who is very sad because they've lost a loved one, someone's died that they love, we often say, what do we say? What do I say to this person? Mm-hmm. Well, we can always say that passage from Romans that Pastor Rebecca just said. Mm-hmm. Memorize it. It's very important because it's truly words of comfort if you're a person of faith. If we have been united with Christ in a death like his, we shall most certainly be united with him in a resurrection like his. Mm-hmm. Those are important words. It's Jesus's way of saying, do not be afraid. Well, this is a good way to end. This is our last story for the stories in the Bible stories in the Spark Bible. I'm so glad the boys and girls have paid attention this year to these stories that have been so important, I think, to helping us understand what Jesus and what God are trying to say to us through this special book called the Bible.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Anything else? Well, we have one more special show, and we can't wait to see you next time.
All right.
All right. We'll see.
All right.
You well, everybody.
Bye-bye.